Good. What about you?
Good. I'm good. I'm sick today, but I'm feeling all right.
No, not sick.
I know.
Drink water, get some sleep. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Calm things. So today I kind of wanted to talk about so I am a trans journalist and I've also been a trans stand-up comedian for a little bit. And so me and my boyfriend are he's also a stand-up comedian. We have transitioned very publicly as well as you have. And something that's really interesting about your experience specifically is in addition to transitioning publicly through Fantasy High and Unsleeping City, you've also like very publicly learned the game of Dungeons and Dragons. Have those two experiences informed each other? Have they had any impact on each other? Like, has your public transition impacted the way you play characters? Has it impacted the way you relate to this very vulnerable medium of performing in an actual play?
Yeah, I really like that question. I don't think that they've necessarily informed each other, but it has been a really crazy experience. So I do think like when I was playing Kristen first, I was like, I'm playing myself in this way that I think a lot of people when they play D&D, either you kind of go the route of like, "Ooh, I'll play this version of me," or I'll play this kind of like aspirational version of me that doesn't look like me at all, you know? And so it was kind of fun to play this like church camp girl, and then now we're coming back to it 5 years later. I don't look like this person. I don't identify with this person. And now it's almost like I am getting that full experience of like playing a full fantasy version of myself that I look and act nothing alike. And so that's been pretty fun.
That is really cool. I recently wrote an article about gender in TTRPGs and how you can kind of like explore gender in
Totally.
TTRPGs in a bit of a way. How is playing a ostensibly cisgender woman, unless we explore gender through
Yeah.
Kristen at all in this season, but a cisgender woman compared to like playing a trans man in Unsleeping City? Like, how are those two experiences different as a performer?
Yeah, I think it's been really fun because most character okay, I guess this is just like I can only speak for my experience,
Of
but I think
course.
when it comes to like sexuality or gender, when you're first coming to grips with these kind of like jumping out of a plane decisions where you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna change everything. This is so scary." Afterwards, that's kind of all you wanna talk about. You're like, "I did this really scary big thing." And you kinda think that that's what life is gonna feel like forever. You're like, "And I will always be on the tip of my tongue talking about my journey with hormones." And then that stuff kinda starts to fade to the back, and, like, I had this moment where I was like, it's so awkward that I'm always talking about gender and sexuality. Like, there's so much more to me. There's so many other interests that I have. And so with Fantasy High and all of Dimension 20, I think I've gotten to really play different characters on the spectrum of that. Like all the characters that I play are queer in some way, but that's not like the driving force of their story. So I think for like Kristen, this is like a high schooler. It is like her queerness is
Mm.
like super important to her. So it was really fun to kind of like hop back in and be like, like I'm out and proud. I'm like, I'm like with the GSA. I'm this, and like that
I'm the
was kind of
straight girl in the
fun.
GSA. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So in like in that aspect of not feeling as you need to talk about it as much in certain aspects, like I very much understand that you kind of feel boxed in certain ways.
Mm.
You also end up talking the release this morning of the like behind the scenes talk about like
Oh yeah, yeah.
the consequences of growth and like learning that you need to kind of like take care of yourself. I feel like especially as people going through big transitions, you have like a very chaotic period of growth and change, and especially when you're just starting hormones, there is this like emotional dysregulation that occurs.
Totally.
Can you speak a little bit more to that experience of like what you're trying to convey with Kristen in this season?
Yeah. Well, I think that something that I wanted to explore with Kristen in this like third season, this like junior year, is this idea of like the chaotic lesbian. And I think that that's like, it's like chaotic lesbian representation. Like people love that. They're like, oh my gosh, Kristen's so chaotic, ha ha ha. But I'm like, okay, what is that stemming from? I do think that like with queer people, we have a lot less like containment because we're really having to forge our own paths. And like a lot of queer people, aren't born to queer parents. You're really kind of like figuring out your own leadership, and sometimes that's like very chaotic rock stars, or you know what I mean? Like, who are our like people that we're looking up to? So I do think, yeah, I wanted to be like, yeah, chaos and kind of like crazy chaotic lesbian is a type. Why is it a type? What does it mean? Is there like a better way of living? So I think it was kind of like a little bit of a reckoning season for Kristen, just having to like face kind of like, what does it mean for me to be the chaotic friend and not the friend who is like looking out for everybody else? Do I always need to be taken care of? Am I ever the caretaker? And if the answer is I'm never the caretaker, am I a good friend? Like, what's up? So yeah.
I love that. And like in conjunction with like the spirituality aspect of Kristen's character, like how does that play into the season of like kind of growing up and maturing in this way and embracing a new version of spirituality that has ostensibly changed every season of Fantasy High?
Yeah, and it doesn't stop. It keeps on changing.
I love
She's a
that.
real searcher. Um, yeah, no, I think like her kind of like just changing the punctuation mark behind the word yes has been kind of like her MO. And that doesn't really change in this season. I think she's truly still trying to figure out what it means to not have all the answers when coming from, this kind of like there's this big holy book that has all the answers like religion, and then just kind of she's kind of like a pendulum for sure. She's like all answers to no answers to hopefully finding her middle somewhere in college probably.
That's so real though. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
real.
yeah,
Just gonna do some psychedelics or something. She'll
yeah,
figure it
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
My final question. I'm gonna ask a real hard-hitting journalism question, and if you want it to be off the record, it certainly can be.
Oh great, yeah.
But have you ever faked a role on Dimension 20?
Oh, I have not. And I love this question.
Ooh.
This comes up so often, and we thought about putting a camera on my roll box because these nat 20s are actually crazy. But
Crazy.
it really is, I think this upcoming season, Zach has a ton of 20s, and someone was doing like a tally of the roles, and I don't actually have like so many more nat 20s than everybody else. They just come at these kind of like crazy moments, and Brennan really rewards them in this way that like highlights them a lot. So I do think like it's kind of we're both working together to make it seem like there are these like epic roles, but he has story and gameplay that he needs to get out. So he's kind of like, okay, great. Yeah, now you get this huge lore dump and I look like I win a jackpot. Like,
I love that. And I do love that it stays honest to what actual play is, the authenticity and the improv. It's really beautiful. And what a great answer, but also I so deeply would have respected if the answer was yes.
yeah. Well, I think the vibe that we have the table, I think people I I actually I don't know what I would do if Murph or Lou rolled something and then lied. Like I glanced over and saw that they had lied. I actually would feel like a little bit disturbed. But like I think we just haven't.
Radical
It's always
transparency.
been so silly. Maybe if there was some kind of like moment where I thought, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that would be so funny though. But yeah, it is true. It's very like people have been like, you need to get new dice. And so I get new dice each season and they're still rolling hot. So I don't know.
The dice gods, they are with
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Exactly.
I think that's the end of the time. I know I'm sure you have
Awesome.
other stuff, but thank you so much for giving the
Yeah,
time to me. I
thank you so
really
much,
appreciate it.
Rowan. It was great to meet you.